I should have said no from the beginning. When Sarah first brought up the idea 6 months ago, curled up against me on our worn leather couch, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I just think we should explore," she said, her fingers tracing patterns on my chest. "We've been together since college, Marcus. Don't you wonder what else is out there?" I did wonder, sometimes, but not enough to risk what we had built over 4 years together. Not enough to watch her walk out the door to be with someone else. "I don't know, Sarah," I said, but she was already pulling up articles on her phone about ethical non-monogamy, about how it could strengthen relationships, about how jealousy was just a social construct we could overcome. The conversations stretched over weeks. She was persistent, in the gentle way she always was, wearing me down with logic and research and promises that nothing would change between us. "It's just physical," she insisted. "You're still my person." I agreed, because I was afraid of losing her entirely. I agreed because she made it sound like the mature, evolved thing to do. I agreed because saying no felt selfish and possessive, and I didn't want to be that kind of boyfriend. For the first month, it was just theoretical. We set up profiles on apps, talked about boundaries, established our rules. No sleepovers, no emotional involvement. Always use protection. Tell each other everything. Sarah was excited in a way I hadn't seen in years, and I tried to match her energy, tried to convince myself this could work. Then she met David. I knew the moment she came home from their first coffee date. There was a lightness in her step, a flush in her cheeks that I recognized from when we first started dating. She told me about him, a photographer, funny, good listener, while I nodded and smiled and felt pieces of myself breaking off and floating away. "It's just coffee," she said, but her eyes were bright in a way they hadn't been when she looked at me in months. The first time she stayed over at his place, breaking our no sleepover rule, just 3 weeks in, I sat in our apartment drinking beer and watching Netflix until 3 a.m., unable to focus on anything except the empty space beside me in bed. When she came home the next morning with apology coffee and croissants, I accepted both without complaint. "The rules can evolve," she said, and I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. I'd tried dating too, half-heartedly. A few coffee dates that went nowhere, conversations that felt forced. How do you explain to someone that you're in an open relationship you never really wanted? How do you build something real when half your heart is watching your girlfriend fall for someone else? Sarah was spending 3 nights a week at David's by the second month. She'd come home glowing, full of stories about art galleries and late-night talks, and how he really got her creative side. I started working longer hours, hitting the gym more, anything to fill the space she was leaving behind. "This is good for us," she'd insist, during our increasingly rare dinners together. "I'm learning so much about myself." I was learning too, but not what she meant. I was learning that I could smile while my chest caved in. I was learning that love could feel like drowning in slow motion. Then I met Elena. It was at a bookstore on a rainy Thursday afternoon in November. I was browsing the philosophy section, trying to find something that might help me make sense of what my life had become, when she asked if I'd read the Camus novel I was holding. "Not yet," I said, looking up into dark eyes that seemed to see straight through me. "It's devastating," she said with a small smile, "in the best possible way." Elena Vasquez was 26, a graduate student in comparative literature, originally from Valencia. We talked for 2 hours in the cafe upstairs that first day, about books, about the absurdity of existence, about how sometimes the things we think we want aren't the things that actually make us happy. She had this way of listening that made me feel like everything I said mattered, like I was interesting again. When she asked for my number, I almost told her about Sarah, about our arrangement, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, like I was worth knowing. Maybe it was how long it had been since anyone had looked at me that way. I said, I'd like that instead. Our first date was supposed to be casual, drinks at a wine bar near her campus. It lasted until closing time. Elena talked about her thesis on magical realism in Latin American literature with a passion that made her whole face light up. She asked about my work as a software engineer, not like it was boring technical stuff, but like she genuinely wanted to understand what I created. "You have kind eyes," she said, as we stood outside the bar, and something in my chest that had been clenched tight for months finally loosened. I told myself it was just physical attraction, just the novelty of someone new showing interest. But when Elena texted me the next day with a photo of a particularly absurd modern art installation she'd seen, accompanied by, "This made me think of our conversation about beauty being subjective," I found myself smiling for the first time in weeks. Our second date was coffee and a walk through the university gardens. Our third date was dinner at a small Spanish restaurant where Elena taught me how to properly eat paella while she told stories about her grandmother in Valencia. By our fourth date, I was in trouble.
Elena didn't just listen to me, she remembered things. She asked follow-up questions about the project I'd mentioned being stressed about. She sent me articles she thought I'd find interesting. When I told her about my college band and how I'd given up playing guitar, she didn't just nod sympathetically. She asked why I'd stopped and whether I missed it. "I miss a lot of things," I admitted, and she studied my face with those perceptive dark eyes. "Maybe you don't have to," she said quietly. At home, Sarah was increasingly consumed with David. She'd canceled our last 2 date nights, once because David had gotten tickets to some gallery opening, once because he was having a creative crisis and needed support. She'd started leaving her phone face down during our conversations, but I could see it lighting up constantly with his messages. "How's your dating going?" she asked one evening, more out of politeness than genuine interest. "Fine," I said, because how could I explain that Elena made me laugh until my sides hurt? How could I tell her that Elena had bought a book I'd mentioned loving and wanted to discuss it with me? How could I admit that for the first time in months, I looked forward to something? The shift happened gradually. Then, all at once, Sarah started noticing when I came home later, when I was less available for her schedule. She'd always taken my flexibility for granted. I was the one who rearranged my plans when she wanted to do something, the one who was always there when she needed support or comfort. "You seem different," she said one night in December, studying me across our kitchen table. "Different how?" "Happier," she said, and there was something uncertain in her voice. Are you actually enjoying this open relationship thing?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was. Not the open relationship itself, but what it had inadvertently led me to. Elena had reminded me who I was outside of being Sarah's accommodating boyfriend. She had encouraged me to dust off my guitar, to write the short stories I'd abandoned, to take up rock climbing again. With Elena, I wasn't walking on eggshells around someone else's feelings and needs. "I think I am," I said honestly. Sarah's face went through several expressions before settling on something I couldn't quite read. "That's good," she said, but it didn't sound good. The breaking point came in January. I'd been seeing Elena for 2 months, and what had started as casual dating had become something neither of us could ignore. She made me feel seen in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Our conversations ranged from silly to profound, and she challenged me intellectually while also being incredibly supportive. When I played her a song I'd written, she cried. When I told her about the app I'd been developing in my spare time, she asked thoughtful questions and believed in it more than I did. I was falling in love with her, and the realization terrified me. "I need to tell you something," I said to Elena as we sat in her small apartment, rain pattering against the windows. "About my situation." I told her everything. About Sarah, about the open relationship I'd never wanted, about how guilty I felt for being happier with Elena than I'd been in years. Elena listened without judgment, her hand finding mine halfway through my confession. "What do you want, Marcus?" she asked when I finished. "Not what Sarah wants, not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" It was a question no one had asked me in so long that the answer caught in my throat. "I want to be with you," I whispered. "I want to try something real with you, but I don't know how to do that without destroying everything else." Alana squeezed my hand. "You can't live your life trying to not hurt people who aren't considering whether they're hurting you." That same week, Sarah came home from David's looking shaken. She sat heavily on our couch, staring at nothing. "Everything okay?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "David wants to move to Portland," she said quietly. "He got offered a gallery show there. He wants me to come with him." I waited for the panic, the desperation to keep her. Instead, I felt relief. What did he tell him? I said I needed to think. She looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in months. "Marcus, I think I made a mistake." "What do you mean?" "This whole thing, the open relationship, I thought I wanted freedom, but I think what I really wanted was to feel wanted again, to feel special." Her voice cracked. "But David doesn't know me like you do. He doesn't laugh at my terrible jokes or remember that I hate mushrooms or know that I need exactly 7 minutes to wake up properly in the morning." I sat down beside her, feeling the familiar weight of being her emotional support. But something was different now. I cared about her pain, but I didn't feel responsible for fixing it. "I want to close our relationship," she said, turning to face me fully. "I want to go back to how things were. I want to choose us." 6 months ago, those words would have been everything I wanted to hear. Now they felt too late. "Sarah," I said gently, "I need to tell you something too." Her face changed as I talked about Elena, about how our connection had grown beyond what either of us had planned. I watched Sarah's expression shift from confusion to hurt to something like panic. "But you didn't want this," she said, her voice rising. "You never wanted an open relationship. This was my idea." "You're right," I said. "I didn't want it. But it happened anyway, and now—"
Now what? Tears were starting to form in her eyes. "Now I'm in love with someone else." The words hung between us like a bridge burning. Sarah stared at me as if I'd slapped her. "You can't be serious. Marcus, we've built a life together. We have plans. We were going to get married, buy a house." "Those were your plans, Sarah. I went along with them the same way I went along with this." I felt cruel saying it, but it was true. "When was the last time you asked what I wanted? Really asked?" She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her rewinding through months of assumptions and decisions made for both of us. "I can end it with David," she said desperately. "We can go back to how things were before any of this happened." "I don't want to go back," I said, and saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. "I want to move forward with Elena." The conversation that followed was messy and painful. Sarah cried, bargained, got angry, then cried again. She accused me of using Elena as revenge, of never really trying to make our open relationship work. Some of it was fair, some of it wasn't, but all of it was too late. I moved out 2 weeks later. The first month in my new apartment was strange. I'd forgotten what it felt like to come home to my own space, to make decisions based only on what I wanted. Elena helped me unpack, and we spent the evening sitting on my floor eating takeout and planning where to put furniture I hadn't owned in years because Sarah had opinions about everything. "Do you regret it?" Elena asked that night, curled against me in my new bed. "Which part? Any of it? All of it?" I thought about it seriously. I regret that people got hurt. I regret that it took me so long to figure out what I wanted, but I don't regret where it led me. She kissed my shoulder. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." Sarah's life, meanwhile,
began to unravel in ways I heard about through mutual friends. David did move to Portland, and their long-distance relationship lasted exactly 3 weeks. She'd turned down a promotion at work to potentially follow him, and by the time she realized the relationship wasn't what she'd thought, the position had been filled by someone else. She started texting me in February, first about practical things, dividing up belongings and handling the lease. Then the messages became more personal. She missed me. She'd made a terrible mistake. Could we try again? I felt sad for her, genuinely, but I also felt something I'd never felt before in relation to Sarah. Clarity about what I didn't want. Elena met her for the first time at a coffee shop where Sarah had asked to return some of my books. I'd offered to go alone, but Elena insisted on coming. "I want to see who had your heart before me," and somehow made it sound curious rather than threatening. Sarah was thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She handed over a box of my things, books, a few t-shirts, the guitar picks I'd thought I'd lost. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Sarah's eyes kept drifting to Elena, taking in her easy confidence, the way she stood close to me without possessiveness, how she smiled warmly even in this awkward situation. "So, you're the famous Elena," Sarah said, and I tensed, but Elena just nodded. "And you're Sarah. Marcus has told me a lot about you." "All good things, I hope?" "Honest things," Elena replied, which was somehow both kinder and more devastating than any criticism could have been. After Sarah left, Elena took my hand. "She's beautiful," she said. "Yeah, she is. She's also miserable." I looked back toward where Sarah had disappeared around the corner. "Yeah, she is. Do you want to help her?" It was another question that cut straight to the truth. A few months ago, the answer would have been automatic. Of course I wanted to help Sarah. That's what I did. I fixed things, smoothed things over, made things easier for her. "I want her to be okay," I said finally. "But I don't want to be the one to make her okay. Not anymore." Elena nodded. "Good. Because you can't save people from the consequences of their choices. Trust me, I've tried." Spring brought new routines. Elena and I moved in together, combining her books with mine, her coffee maker with my gaming setup. She encouraged me to submit my app to a startup accelerator. And when I got accepted, she took me out to celebrate with champagne and dancing until our feet hurt. Meanwhile, Sarah's struggles continued. She'd had to find a new apartment when our lease ended, settling for a studio across town that she complained about to mutual friends. The promotion opportunity at her marketing firm had led to a restructuring that eliminated her department entirely, leaving her scrambling for a new position. Without David and without me, she seemed to drift in a way that was painful to witness from a distance. She showed up at my new apartment on a Tuesday evening in April, when Elena was at her evening seminar. She looked small, standing in my doorway, wearing the blue sweater I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in, made tea the way she liked it, 2 sugars, splash of milk, old habits. "I've been thinking," she said, settling onto my couch like she belonged there, "about us, about what I threw away. Sarah." "No, let me say this." She looked around the apartment, taking in the guitar in the corner, the houseplants Elena had insisted would make the space feel alive, the photos of our weekend hiking trips. "You're happy here. Really happy. I can see it." I didn't deny it. I convinced myself that I needed more, that what we had wasn't enough. But I was wrong, wasn't I? What we had was everything. I just couldn't see it because it was steady and reliable and safe. And I thought those were boring things. They're not boring things, I said quietly. They're rare things. Elena gives you those things. It wasn't a question. She does, and more. Sarah's composure cracked then. I ruined the best thing in my life because I was selfish and stupid and thought the grass was greener somewhere else. And now you found someone who appreciates what I was too immature to value. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her she'd find happiness again, that this was all for the best. But Elena's voice echoed in my head. You can't save people from the consequences of their choices. I'm sorry you're hurting, but I can't go back. Even if I begged, even if you begged. She cried then, ugly tears that she tried to hide behind her hands. I gave her tissues and sat quietly while she grieved what we'd lost, what she'd given away. When she finally composed herself, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Take care of yourself, Marcus, she said at the door. You deserve someone who knows what they have. I watched her walk away for what I knew would be the last time, feeling sad but not regretful. Elena came home an hour later to find me on the couch with my guitar, working through a melody that had been stuck in my head. How did it go? She asked, settling beside me. Like a goodbye, I said. She kissed my temple, played me what I was working on. So I did. The song was about second chances and finding yourself in someone else's eyes and the courage to choose happiness even when it means hurting people you care about. Elena listened with her head on my shoulder, humming along when she caught the melody. It's beautiful, she said when I finished. It's about you, I said. About us. I know. That summer, I heard through friends that Sarah had moved back to her hometown in Oregon, taking a job with a small nonprofit there. She'd started therapy, was learning to rock climb, seemed to be slowly rebuilding herself. I was glad. She deserved to be happy, just not with me. Elena and I got engaged on the anniversary of the day we met in the bookstore. I proposed with a simple ring and a copy of that Camus novel, with a note written in the margins about how some devastating things are devastating in the best possible way. As I write this, 2 years later, I sometimes think about the strange chain of events that led me here. If Sarah hadn't pushed for an open relationship, I never would have met Elena. If she hadn't fallen for David, I might have closed myself off to new possibilities. If I hadn't been forced to examine what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I should want, I might have spent my whole life settling. Sarah taught me what love looked like when it was conditional and convenient. Elena taught me what it looked like when it was intentional and true. I should have said no from the beginning. But maybe some mistakes lead us exactly where we need to be. Elena is reading over my shoulder now, having caught me writing in our shared home office. She doesn't ask what I'm working on. She never does, trusting that I'll share when I'm ready. Instead, she sets a cup of coffee beside my laptop and kisses the top of my head. Almost done? She asks. Almost, I say, watching her settle into her own chair with a stack of student papers to grade. The evening light catches her hair, and I'm struck again at the simple miracle of choosing and being chosen. Some stories end with grand gestures or dramatic revelations. This one ends with coffee going cold while we work in comfortable silence, with Elena humming the melody I wrote about second chances, and the quiet certainty that we found each other exactly when we were both ready to be found. Sarah was right about one thing. We should explore. But exploration doesn't always mean looking outside what you have. Sometimes it means looking deeper into what you could have with the right person at the right time when you're finally brave enough to choose your own happiness. Sometimes the best discoveries happen when you stop searching
and start living.